Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to the Peer-to-Peer Policy Pod. I'm Brian Morgenstern here with Sam Lyman to talk about Bitcoin, politics, business, and some very weird, funny things that happened in the news over the weekend. Sam, where do you want to begin today?
Yeah, crazy week in the news all around the world. Let's start with crypto as we usually do. So last week, we saw a huge vote in Congress, specifically the Senate, with SAB 121. So I'm just going to summarize this in the most basic, easy to understand terms possible for our audience. So SAB 121 is the bill that would make it extremely difficult for banks to custody Bitcoin and other digital assets. So as you might guess, SAB 121 was supported by Elizabeth Warren. It's an SEC directive that Elizabeth Warren, she championed this all the way, but those who are pro-crypto in Congress were very much against it. So much so that we actually saw a vote in the House of Representatives where 21 Democrats defected in a vote to nullify SAB 121. So it was this big deal when this bill came before the Senate last week, when we saw even more defectors who voted to nullify SAB 121, including, get this, Chuck Schumer, the Senate Democratic leader. So that's big news, right? So to summarize this, again, this is for people who aren't a DC policy wonk audience. I made a quick video using Lord of the Rings to describe the biggest news in crypto last week. Dylan, can you cue that up for us? So yeah, it's called the Two Towers. We have Saruman. He's Elizabeth Warren. We got Senator Lummis at the end releasing the dam. And so Senator Warren just had this dam of resistance that she built up in both the Senate and the House, where she scared people into doing anything, against doing anything that was pro-crypto. So finally we saw that dam break last week. And with it, it's positive momentum in crypto, right? Finally, the 52 million crypto-owning Americans are finding their voice, descending on the Senate. Here we have the 21 House Dem defectors. Warren's like, what's going on? I was not expecting this. And so our anti-crypto army is about to get swept away, or at least they're facing a lot of resistance. And then we had Ben Sitters, and you had again Schumer. He was carrying vulnerable Dems on his back. And then I threw in John Tester there, potentially saving his re-election chances with this vote. Well, that's just a summary of it. Thank you, Dylan. That's more or less what happened in crypto last week, as explained by Lord of the Rings. Brian, can you break it down for us, though?
Sure. Yeah, I'll take another crack at that. And I like the illustration. Very good, very clever. So SAB stands for Staff Accounting Bulletin from the SEC, and it made it so that a bank, if they were going to custody it, let's say I have a bank account and I say I would like to keep my Bitcoin at that financial institution. I trust that one. I know them. I've been working with them for years, so I would like for them to custody those assets for me. The SEC said, well, for SEC regulated institutions, you have to treat that like a liability, which means you then have to have additional capital controls and capital basically as a backup to pretend that it's not really an asset. You have to pretend it's a liability. So it didn't make any sense whatsoever. They tried to do it as the Staff Accounting Bulletin to avoid going through the rulemaking process that they have to go through. We've seen this pattern, by the way, with the regulators in this administration trying to avoid administrative process as much as they can. It's really, I mean, it's designed to avoid accountability. So everybody saw through it. The GAO, Government Accountability Office, did a report that said, yeah, this is a rule. You should have treated it like a rule instead of just issuing an edict from on high. You should have gone through a rulemaking process and invited public comment and scrutiny and really thought this through. So anyway, Congress decided, yeah, we got to overturn this. So there's something called the Congressional Review Act where they can overturn an agency rule. And so the House of Representatives, all the Republicans were in favor of overturning it so that banks can custody assets for their customers. Again, this is about what the customers want and, you know, business that financial institutions can have. As Bitcoiners, we don't love banks, but we do love freedom. So we want the customers and the financial institutions to be able to do what they want, what they're comfortable with. So the House of Representatives, pretty much all the Republicans were in favor of overturning the rule because they didn't think it was fair. And then 21 and then the White House, this is important to note, the Biden administration, there's something called a statement of administration position, which comes out of the Office of Management and Budget. This is all DC speak, so it's a little weedy. But when there's a bill moving through Congress, they come out with a statement of administration position to show what would the president do if this reached his desk. Well, they put out a statement that said he would veto this if it reaches his desk before the House voted. And yet still, all the Republicans and then 21 of the Democrats voted to overturn this rule. It goes to the Senate. Based on all the data that we've been seeing and putting out on how voters actually care about this stuff and about how people who are not particularly wedded to the Democrats or the Republicans want the freedom to transact and hold these new assets, it's an election issue. And I think that's why Senator Schumer, majority leader from New York, told his conference, vote your conscience. Don't toe the line with the administration necessarily. You do what you think is going to be right for your constituents. And what we saw was 60 votes in the Senate, including 12 Democrats. 12 Democrats voted against the Biden administration's veto threat to overturn this rule. So now we'll wait and see what the White House is going to do. I don't think we've heard definitively. I mean, they put out the statement saying he would veto this. I don't think he has yet. So we'll see what happens. Under the Constitution, it's, when it's presented to him, I think he has 10 days to decide. And I think that this is now, it's pretty clear that this is a political liability for moderates to be siding with the administration and large financial institutions against customers and their financial advisors who just want, like I said, the freedom to transact. This is a huge development. I don't think anybody in the Bitcoin or crypto universe wants it to be a partisan issue. It should be about freedom. It should be about innovation. It should be about, American leadership in the economy of the future. It shouldn't be partisan. But Senator Warren and her wing of the Democratic Party have staked out this position against what people want. And it doesn't make a lot of sense. And they're losing these battles in overwhelming fashion. When you get 60 votes in the Senate to agree on anything these days, I mean, that's, I think, effectively a consensus. And so we're reaching a consensus that people want the U.S. to lead. They want clear rules of the road. They don't want our industry to be treated differently or more unfairly than any other industry. They just want the government to back off and let them innovate, let them succeed, let them transact the way they want to. And so huge development. It is rightly shifting these things to nonpartisan or bipartisan. And I think just the raw cynical politics of it. You're seeing a lot of Democrats who have tough races this year in the Senate in particular start to side with the innovators and kind of the younger, more diverse demographics who like Bitcoin and who like crypto. They're starting to shift in that direction versus protecting the legacy institutions. So it's a vibe shift, I think, as you like to point out quite a bit. This is a very dramatic one, and it's a very positive one. We should be celebrating. We should be thanking these members. I never thought I'd be thanking Chuck Schumer. I never thought I'd be thanking John Tester. I never thought I'd be thanking a lot of the 21 Democrats, Jared Moskowitz. I believe Richie Torres was on there. I'm sorry, we won't go through the entire list, but it's great when you find an issue that is good for America, good for consumers, good for our economy, and good for freedom. I think sometimes you can set your differences aside and say thank you and congratulations for reaching the right conclusion there. So huge week in crypto. Coming up is the vote on Fit 21. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah.
Or do you have any media for that, or do you just want to just jump into it?
Just one more question I wanted to ask.
Yeah, sure.
on the SAB 121 rules. So
Sure.
It brings up an interesting question, which is, has Elizabeth Warren's anti-crypto army seen its peak? And you can kind of get a sense that she is fearful about this, because last week before this vote was taken, she pleaded with her Senate colleagues to not vote for this bill, right? Dylan, can you play that clip for us?
And the CRA is limited to agency rules so that a single member of Congress can't tie up agencies and Congress with expedited procedures under the CRA by raking over the details of every agency action. Today's vote, coming more than 2 years after the SEC wrote the bulletin and applying to a staff bulletin rather than a rule, is far outside the scope of the CRA. We should not be holding this vote, and all by itself, that is a good enough reason to vote no.
Thanks, Dylan. That's the line that I took away. We should not be holding this vote. Why is that, Senator Warren? Because you know you're about to lose. So again, it raises this interesting question is, have we seen the peak of Senator Warren's anti-crypto army? We're not saying it's disbanded, right? But it seems like they're against the ropes at this point. Your thoughts on that?
I'd agree with that. I also think it's extremely telling and frankly galling that she would stand there and make this argument that these agencies should be able to have workarounds to the law, to the legal process. If you're going to put in a rule as consequential as this to tell people, in effect, you can't call your banker and say, would you custody my assets? I mean, that is a dramatic thing to do. That is obviously a major policy decision. She's defending this agency's attempt to say, we're just going to circumvent the process. What they had to do was issue a rule, solicit public comment, deal with those comments, come up with a final rule. Like, there's a process for a reason. It's to get to the best result and to make sure the agencies are following the law. Her defense was, you should let the agencies run amok and ignore the law. I mean, that is like the most outrageous argument ever. So of course it failed miserably. And I think to directly address your question, they are on the ropes because a lot of Americans like these things. They like Bitcoin. They like digital assets. They're very curious about it. And even if they don't like it, they're uncomfortable with the government coming in and telling people what you can and can't do. As long as it's not harming other people, right? Like, these innovations we know because we're in the thick of them, just how promising they are. But you have to be able to experiment. You have to be able to try new things. And her dogmatic approach of like, no, it is my way or the highway, is losing. It's just losing. And so that's why you had almost 24 defectors in the House. That's why you had 60 votes in the Senate vote against her after her impassioned speech. It's a couple of things. It's that tide is turning. It's that people do want more freedom. And the naysayers are just, I mean, there's no merit to their argument, frankly. So they're losing the debate. They're losing politically because the voters are against them, almost all of them. And then I would say third, I mean, her defense, like I said, was nonsensical. Her defense was the agency avoided accountability and you should let them. Like, okay, if that's what you're leaning on, you truly are against the ropes and you're about to lose. So tide is turning politically big time. And that is great for America. It is great for consumers. It is great for anybody who wants to participate in the economy of the future.
I really like that. It's true. Elizabeth Warren is against the ropes. She's also against the Constitution. I think she's showing her true colors by wanting to empower an agency that is unaccountable to democracy. I think she's showing what she truly believes in, which is centralized planning. And it's going to take a while for us to be able to see this thing in full focus. But my opinion is that Elizabeth Warren and the Anti-Crypto Army actually peaked in December 2023 with Warren's anti-money laundering bill, where she was able to get a couple Republicans to sign on with her and call it a bipartisan bill. I think that was the peak for her. I think ever since then, as the dam has broken, people are realizing that this is a political loser. It's something they don't want to be aligned with. And the anti-crypto army, as Elizabeth Warren phrased it, will be essentially a burden on her for the rest of her campaign. So it'll be really interesting to see how it all plays out. And Brian, earlier you mentioned FIT 21. So there's lots of 21s, right? SAB 121, FIT 21, 21 million Bitcoin. FIT 21, though, is a comprehensive regulatory framework for the crypto industry. It would be the biggest crypto bill to ever pass Congress. And we're building on positive momentum right now, where the bill to nullify SAB 121 was voted in positive favor in both the House and the Senate. And this week, the House is going to consider FIT 21, and it's going to go to the Senate thereafter. Brian, can you give us a preview of what we can expect going forward with FIT 21 and what potential obstacles we might face and why this bill is so significant?
Yeah, so the SAB 121 vote was a very important preview because it was the first time that members of both parties and both houses of Congress were going to have to go on the record on a chamber-wide, full House and full Senate basis to determine who is kind of pro and anti-innovation. So this is leading in quite nicely to a vote, and I'm sure it's no accident. This is leading in nicely to a vote on what's called FIT 21, which is the market structure bill is another name for it. And the reason why it's called that is because there's been all this hostility towards digital assets, and the SEC has been leading the charge against them. But as part of the context, there's been a food fight between the SEC and the CFTC. So the SEC regulates securities, the CFTC regulates commodities. Securities are stocks, commodities are things like gold, wheat, cattle futures, things of that nature. Bitcoin is frequently considered a commodity. Other digital assets might be securities. They might be, investment contracts. That's frequently the issue at stake. So this is going to attempt to clearly draw the lines of jurisdiction. And what's going to happen, I think what a lot of people think is going to happen if this is passed into law, is that the SEC is going to be brought to heel. The SEC all of a sudden is going to have to follow rules, whereas right now they've been behaving extremely hostily and rashly and kind of, anti-innovation, I guess. Just trying to shoehorn or trying to fit square pegs in round holes. I don't know what metaphor you want to use, but they've been attacking a lot of innovative companies. And this bill would attempt to draft clear rules that they're going to have to follow now. And I think a lot of the things they've been claiming should fall within their jurisdiction probably won't. And they'll either be not a regulated asset or they'll be a commodity falling under the CFTC, or otherwise it will take power away from the SEC. That's the dynamic I think that we're going to see, because when you have clearer rules, they have less of a sandbox to play around in. So it's a very important vote. And I think what's going to come up in the coming days is the House of Representatives is probably going to pass this bill to establish clear rules of the road for digital assets and how they can be traded on the market. And then it's going to go to the Senate. And we already had 60 senators vote to overturn SAB 121. If those lines hold, we may actually have a digital asset market structure in the United States. That is a huge deal because Europe has already been implementing one. Asian countries have been working on them, developing them. Australia has been working on one. Lots of other jurisdictions have been rolling out the red carpet saying, innovators, leave Silicon Valley, leave the United States, come to our country because we're at least going to give you clear rules. You're going to know what's legal and what's not legal. It makes your business a lot more predictable. It allows you to grow in a responsible way. Well, now all of a sudden, I think members of Congress have been hearing this and they're starting to get the message. They're starting to get the message that it's not just a policy issue, it's a political issue, and it's going to be impactful in 2024 election. So if the SAB 121 vote holds true, we may actually see something that we didn't expect, which is bipartisan cooperation to pass a full market structure, comprehensive market structure bill, so that Americans will know what digital asset falls into what category, and so what regulator oversees that, and then how can they, safely, responsibly hold these assets as part of their portfolio. So that's setting aside the true laser-eyed Bitcoiners, who of course we know and love and are a part of that community, who custody your own assets. By the way, there's an amendment to this bill that could safeguard the right to custody your own assets if you want to have a a wallet device that we've talked about so frequently, and you want to be your own bank, you want to custody your own assets. There's an amendment that's being proposed to potentially, basically make that a federal right. There's several other amendments that are being proposed to this bill. So who knows what's going to be added, what games they're going to try to play. But the bottom line is we could see in the aftermath of the SAB 121 vote, a big bipartisan vote. You could now see that vote carrying over to create a comprehensive market structure for digital assets in the United States, enshrining in federal law Americans' rights to participate in these markets. It's hugely important. It's very promising. I think everybody has a lot of reason to be optimistic right now. The game's not over, but it's trending in the right direction.
Yeah, great news. What's crazy to me is that we're in May of an election year. For those who don't know, the legislative window in Congress during an election year, especially a presidential election year, usually closes in March. And here we are debating potentially about to pass a comprehensive legal framework for crypto. It's crazy. Like, that never happens. And so the crypto community has really played its cards well politically. We've got Stand With Crypto. We've got various crypto PACs out there who are making themselves known in key swing races across the country right now. And so I'm curious, from your perspective, how did this all happen? Why is there a vibe shift now in the middle of an election year? Is it because it's an election year that the vibe shift is actually taking place?
Yeah, I think so. And we saw what needed to happen, which this industry is full of people who are not inherently political. A lot of them have more libertarian leanings. They're not naturally Republican or Democrat. They just want to be able to innovate. And they had tried to fly under the government radar for so long, and then they realized that doesn't actually work that well. Like, you actually have to engage pretty heavily in the process, in the political process, in order to have your voice heard. A cliche that I've heard very frequently is, if you're not at the table, you're on the menu. So, look, Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies are very disruptive to a lot of legacy institutions that have deep pockets, that have been involved in the lobbying game and trade associations, and, ingratiating themselves to members on the Hill for generations. So I think the crypto community is finally waking up and realizing that you can't be that disruptive and expect, not to have pushback. So I think what they've done is, they started to talk to people who know how this town works. They started to realize that there are a few, currency-like things that can get you audiences in DC and help influence the process. Money and votes are two big ones. And so they've invested in some of these political operations to identify who are these voters, to do surveys, to get some polling data, to which has been very helpful, because it actually has shown it's not a partisan issue. It is across demographic lines. It is across partisan lines. It's more of a generational issue, and we're getting to the point where mid 40s and under, is a good half of the electorate, and so they've been able to make their case from a political standpoint as to why the policy outcomes are going to be good for the politicians. It's going to get them more donations and more votes. And they've really focused on engaging in the primary process to make sure that friendly candidates, a lot of the country is gerrymandered. So a lot of districts are going to be Republican or Democrat no matter what, which means that the primary is the most important fight in that district. And so some of these groups have been engaging very heavily in those primaries and offering, enough support to kind of push a few candidates over the top. And so they've proven their worth from an electoral standpoint already, because we've had a lot of primaries across the country already. And so the concept being proven or getting proven from a political standpoint, that there are voters out there who will vote on these issues, and that it's having an impact in the outcome of primaries already, then I think you're waking up a bunch of other politicians who are saying, holy cow, these guys actually could make a difference in my race in the fall. And so maybe we should go on record with some things that will demonstrate that I'm for them. Because if I'm for them, then they won't target me, and maybe they'll even support me. So I don't know. I think that's kind of the evolution of what we've seen happening. Some very strategic and worthwhile investments by the Bitcoin and crypto community to engage in the process, to identify the voters, turn out the voters, get some highly visible ads and publicity towards the cause. And I think it's worked really, really wonderfully. Because as we've said frequently, and I think it stands true today, you can get an outsized benefit by supporting innovators, by supporting the young people who want the freedom to transact, and it doesn't come with that much of a cost. Because there are not that many voters who are going to line up to vote against Bitcoin. That doesn't really make sense. But there are a lot of voters who will line up to vote for it. If you make it an issue, if you speak to those voters, it will make a positive difference for you. So that's been the big dynamic change that I think has been hugely beneficial. And I think that's why we're seeing the momentum that we're seeing. That's so out of character for an election year, but it's really positive news.
Right. And just as a quick intermission, if you like what you're hearing here, please don't forget to like and subscribe. Brian and I are growing this channel, and it's one of the few, if not the only, crypto exclusive content on Rumble right now. So please, if you're enjoying what you're hearing, don't forget to like and subscribe. Brian, you hit on an interesting point, which is the idea of the political entrepreneur. There are very discerning politicians out there who recognize that in crypto, there's huge political upside to supporting this industry and almost no downside whatsoever. I think no one understands that better than Senator Cynthia Lummis. Do you mind pulling up our laser eye meme of Senator Lummis, Dylan? Okay, so this was just this last week. For those who don't know, Senator Lummis is the crypto queen of Congress, and she sent out a meme of her with laser eyes. So the laser-eyed Bitcoin maxis is what this is referencing. And Senator Lummis is saying here, I am for Bitcoin all the way. Let's go. Let's do this. This to me is what made me realize, okay, this is a major vibe shift. If we have a leading senator in Congress coming out as a Bitcoiner, being explicit about it, speaking in the native language of Bitcoin, which is memes, truly an incredible time for the industry. And I think a lot of it traces back to the fact that Donald Trump, a couple of weeks ago, came out and said, I'm fine with crypto. If you like crypto, vote for Trump, his actual words. And that's really shaking up the race in an interesting way as well. We have seen Trump recently start to take the lead against Biden, and he held a massive rally last week in your home state of New Jersey, where an estimated 80,000 to 100,000 people came out to this rally. Dylan, do you mind playing a clip of that for us? Huge. This captures just a small bit of it, but it's literally as far as the eye can see along a beach in, I believe, Wildwood, New Jersey. So there's a lot of palpable momentum for Trump out on the campaign trail right now. That's only been enhanced by his endorsement of the crypto industry. Brian, how do you assess the state of the race right now? You've been to one of these rallies. Can you tell us what they're like and if this is actually a viable indicator of Trump's support right now?
Well, I haven't been to one. I've been to many of these for work. Because I used to work at the White House when Trump was the president, and so I traveled around. I was on the official staff, of course, not the campaign staff, but have been to many of these events. And there's a quote at the end of one of those Roger Ailes hit piece movies. I think Russell Crowe is playing Roger Ailes, and it was right as the campaign was getting started up, and people thought Trump can't win. Trump will never win. And the quote was, he kind of raised his eyebrows and looked around the room at all the people saying Trump can't win, and basically said, you guys don't understand. People effing love Donald Trump. And I will tell you that having traveled the country, I can tell you that is true. I mean, I remember a motorcade ride through deep blue Long Island where people were out with their Trump flags at the edge of their driveways with their cell phones up, taking pictures and waving and giving thumbs ups. We're talking about New York, where not a lot of Republicans win. And he had huge grassroots support, people really turning out to see him. Now, will it translate into electoral success is another question. Because over the last couple of elections, well, first, let me say this. His pivot, because he was anti-Bitcoin, he was anti-crypto, he was calling it a scam, he was, quite hostile to it back in, 2019, that time frame, 2020. So he has not always had this view. I think he and others around him, serious policymakers, have shifted because they've seen the promise of this technology and they've seen the very, very positive and empowering use cases for it from a societal standpoint, financial inclusion standpoint, being able to empower people who are sort of oppressed by dictators around the world. If we want to advance democratic values, pro-American values, these technologies can be very useful for those purposes as well. So not just innovation and freedom for Americans, but really empowering individuals in new and important ways. And you're seeing a wave around the world. I mean, Javier Milei in Argentina is very pro Bitcoin. You're seeing this kind of populist trend in the direction of Bitcoin and crypto. So I think it is sort of natural, but it's worth mentioning. It's a huge shift for Trump. He did not always have this view, but I think he does have his finger on the pulse. He has never hesitated to change his mind. He's never been afraid of being called a flip-flopper. So the change is not that surprising. He sees a political opportunity there. But to your question about the election as to whether his rally sizes translates into electoral success, look, I think suburban voters, particularly women, abandoned him in 2020. I think from his standpoint, hopefully they come back because they're, for whatever reason, if they're dissatisfied with the Biden presidency, maybe they drift back towards Trump. But I think the more monumental shift we're seeing, which correlates with Bitcoin and crypto and the interest in these things, is because of a distrust of legacy institutions, of big banks and of government entities. People are drifting away from Biden towards Trump. And we're seeing historically high support for a Republican nominee among younger Black and Hispanic men. That could be the difference here. Remember, the whole election is going to be decided by 6 states or less. Probably 100,000 voters or less could flip it. Last time it was 80,000 across 4 states. I think in 2016 it was somewhat similar. So it doesn't take that many voters to make the difference in this election. The people who go to Trump's rallies will walk through a brick wall to vote for him. The question is, will other people who are not, the conductors on the Trump train, are they gonna go for him? And I think those are the interesting demographics to look at. The ones who left him last time, which was suburbanites, mostly women, and the ones who are gravitating towards him this time, younger minority men. How does that translate? It's anybody's guess. It's frankly an eternity between now and the election. So it's hard to predict. But if things keep trending the way they are and inflation stays as high as it is, that increases more interest in Bitcoin and crypto, of course, but it also makes voters dissatisfied with the status quo. Is that going to be more important to voters than, for example, abortion rights, which is an issue that tends to favor Democrats? If you ask me today, I'd say it's Trump's to lose because of the conditions that we're talking about. High inflation, people are worried about crime, people want the economy to be on more sound footing. Actually, Dylan, there's a chart. I don't know if we can do this on the fly, but we can try. Sagar and Jetty tweeted out a chart that I think could define the outcome of this election. And I meant to send it to you earlier, and I'm sorry I didn't send it, but why don't we, it's Sagar is Saager. If I can find it.
Like Sagar's got some good analysis on this.
Yeah, I just want to pull this up. Hang on, let me find it. And I'll send it to you. This is one of the, and I probably misspelled Sagar's name. It's an inflation chart from the from the St. Louis Fed, I think it is. If we can't find it, it's all right. I'll just describe it. It's a chart regarding inflation from one of the Federal Reserve banks, and it shows the increase in household net worth under the Trump administration versus the Biden administration. And it shows both generally trending up and to the right. But then the second one, no, that's not it. Then the second one is adjusting for inflation. And it shows first Trump and Biden both going up and to the right. And then when adjusted for inflation, Trump's is up and to the right and Biden's is down. And it's because, as we've said on this podcast several times, the dollar has lost 25% of its value since 2020. So I know the media keeps saying that the economy is great and the unemployment rate is low and the stock market is up, and why are the voters feeling so distressed? They're wrong, right? Like, they're not. Inflation is having a massive, massive impact on the way people are feeling about the economy. And if you ask me today, I would say that is the number one most important issue in this election. And so as long as the Trump train keeps rolling down the tracks, in the sense that people come to these rallies at the same level that they've been going to these rallies, they're going to show up for Trump, of course. But then you're going to have some of these swing groups, the suburbanites and the minority men, who tend to be moving and more independent minded and up for grabs. Then I think it is a trend that is very much in the Republicans' favor and against the incumbents' favor, in this case, the Democrats. So that's my election analysis hat for today. And I'm sorry I didn't have the chart teed up, but that's my fault.
Super interesting. Brian, you brought up a really interesting point about suburban women and how Trump struggled with suburban women in the last go round. So he hopes to make up for lost ground there, potentially by getting more minority voters to vote for him. But he also has an interesting choice to make in the next few weeks with who he's going to pick as his VP. Do you think that will factor into his choice for VP, suburban women? And if so, who do you think is his best choice on that front?
I think it will play into it. But I would say the other piece of that as well is the younger male minorities that I think are trending more towards Trump than any other Republican candidate in my memory. So I would broaden it, and I would say if you're looking at the vice president pick from the standpoint of, I want to pick somebody who's going to help me get elected, which is what most nominees do, if we're being honest. You know, the primary concern should be, will this person be a good president? But once you pass that screening, it's who's going to help me get elected. And so I think I would broaden it. I would say suburban women are very important. If that is the voting block that is the most kind of important based on their analysis, you could see a shift back towards Nikki Haley, although that seems unlikely, considering Trump poured a gallon of cold water on that one recently. Sarah Huckabee Sanders is another potential one, if that's the demographic that you're trying to identify with most closely. If you're looking more towards younger minority men, Black or Hispanic, then maybe you're looking at Tim Scott or Marco Rubio, or Byron Donalds, to name a few. There are some fabulous choices out there, but that I think, my guess is that they're going to be aiming pretty squarely at one of those swing voting blocks with their pick. In fairness, I don't have any insider information, but if I were putting my advisor hat on, I'd say that's probably where they're looking these days.
Yeah, I agree. My money, even though I'm not a betting man, but if I were, my money is on Tim Scott personally, just because I think he can draw in a lot of that minority vote, but also the suburban women vote. I think he plays really well with that audience, and he represents not a foil to Trump, but definitely a softer side of Republican politics, where he can speak to that suburban audience in a way that some of the other potential VP picks couldn't. You mentioned as well, Brian, something really interesting about how many Latino and Black voters Trump is picking up. So, Dylan, I actually just DM'd you on Twitter some Gallup data that we have that shows a huge trend towards Trump among Latino and Black voters. And so this is absolutely fascinating, this chart right here. There we go. Yeah. When you pull this up, we'll see that the Democrats have had a lock on minorities for really the past several decades. That's all really started to change, coincidentally, in 2020. The era of supposed racial reckoning, I think what we actually saw here was a lot of people who were historically voting for Democrats realized that Democrats were taking them for granted and that Trump was actually speaking to a lot of concerns among minority communities, in particular wages, in particular the importance of keeping jobs here in the United States, keeping our communities and families strong. And so we're seeing a real shift towards the Republican Party among voters who historically have voted for Democrats in huge numbers. So I think that will be one of the most important stories of this upcoming election. It'll be really interesting to see. So one last reminder to like and subscribe if you've liked our episode today and what you're watching here. To close this out, we have a grab bag section that Brian.
Well, hang on 1 second.
Oh, yeah,
because I found that chart. So, and I think these dovetail really nicely. So if you look at this one, yep, that one that you just showed us, Dylan, I think was hugely telling. And then the one I just emailed to you, you have a second. So this is the chart on net worth. And I think showing the one that Sam just pulled up with the share of, minority voters getting scrambled, I think should not be a coincidence when you look at this chart, which is the change in household net worth, because this knows no bounds in terms of color, creed, neighborhood, or any other artificial division people can make up amongst Americans. All Americans want a secure financial future. And what you've seen because of really profligate and unnecessary spending and printing of dollars, every dollar the government is printing, especially deficit spending, is devaluing the dollar that's in your pocket. And here, I think, is a definitive chart that proves that from the Federal Reserve Bank of St. Louis. You see the change in household net worth since the start of the presidencies. You see Biden and Trump in nominal value going up, to this point in the presidency, relatively similarly up and to the right. But when you adjust it for inflation, it was something like 16% increase under Trump and a 0.6% increase under Biden. And you can see for a substantial stretch of the Biden presidency, it was underwater. It was actually negative because of inflation. That's why this may be the most important issue of this election. So, responsible fiscal policy and monetary policy can be really boring, but man, it is important. And it can define how people are feeling about their economic health and about the health of their country. So this could be the game changer, folks. Inflation. We will see. Anyway, onto the grab bag.
Onto the grab bag. So this is our section every week where Brian gives us his thoughts on pop culture and politics throughout the week. And a lot happened between Scheffler and the memes we saw with golf. And I mean, just all over the place. So where do you want to start, Brian?
Yeah, we talk about too much serious stuff. So I want to talk about the opposite of serious stuff. And this is weird stuff that happened over the weekend that I did not anticipate and that I thought were very entertaining. So let's start with, we'll go in reverse order. Number 3. I wish we had a drum roll or a house band to play us into this segment. But number 3 is Scottie Scheffler getting arrested was not on my bingo card. The number 1 golfer in the world was arrested on his way to round 2 of the PGA Championship on Friday. And he did not win the PGA Championship, but he did become a meme. Many, many memes. because Scotty Scheffler is known as one of the most friendly, mild-mannered, church-going people, who is the last who would be charged with assaulting a police officer, for God's sake, of all the things he could be charged with. And hilarity ensued. I think it was a misunderstanding. He said as much. It seems like the charges are being dropped. So it was just a confusing incident. I'll just give the factual background quickly, which is that it was really unfortunate. There was a vendor who was struck by a vehicle and killed, unfortunately. And of course, prayers to that individual's family. And that is tragic, and nobody wanted that to happen. But so there was a lot of confusion. And what normally happens at these majors is the participants, especially the #1 ranked golfer in the world, would typically put on their flashers and be kind of escorted around the crowd and into the facility. And there was a police officer who did not get that memo. And so when Scotty tried to go around, the officer tried to jump on his car and make him stop. And the officer ended up falling off and getting hurt, and then hauled him into the Hooskow and booked him and took his mugshot. And so the ridiculous memes ensued. So why don't we check out one of them? And yeah, if you don't think America is still entrepreneurial, this was ready within minutes of this event. And there were actually people at the tournament wearing T-shirts of Scotty's mugshot, within an hour of his arrest. I mean, people are really innovative. That mug is hilarious because it is the mugshots of Tiger Woods, John Daly, and the actor who played Shooter McGavin in Happy Gilmore, along with Scotty's mugshot, to show just how bad boys are involved in the PGA Tour. So absolutely hilarious. I think there was one other. Yep, that one, which has a backstory. So so Scotty driving a golf cart with the trail of cops behind him, of course, harkens back to O.J. Simpson and his white Bronco running away from the cops. But this meme was posted by a guy I actually know named Eric Stangl, who was a former head writer for The Late Show with David Letterman. And when I was an intern in college about 20 years ago, he was one of my bosses. And he's a very funny guy, very nice guy. And so he quickly came up with an amazing meme. So good job, Eric. So Scotty Scheffler's memes made my Friday morning worthwhile. That's number 3. Number 2, let's go to the next thing I didn't have on my bingo card, which is Bill Maher defending Harrison Butker. Harrison Butker, the kicker of the Kansas City Chiefs, gave a speech at a Catholic university. Harrison is known as very religious and traditional in his values, and Bill Maher is the opposite. So seeing Bill Maher defend him was very unusual. Why don't we play that clip real fast for the.
Now, this week there's a guy in the news named Harrison Butker. He's the kicker on the Kansas City Chiefs, also known as the Taylor Swift Chiefs. He got invited to do the commencement address at a conservative Catholic college. But look, I can't express how much this guy is not like me. He's religious. He loves marriage. He loves kids. I couldn't be more not like this guy. He's in big trouble because he said at this event, and this is a Catholic college, conservative Catholics, and they think he's now history's greatest monster. Again, I don't agree with much with this guy, but I don't get the thing. He said, some of you, talking to the women here, some of you may go on to lead successful careers in the world. Okay, that seems fairly modern. But I would venture to guess that the majority of you are most excited about your marriage and the children you will bring into this world. I don't see what the big crime is. I really don't. And I think this is part of the problem people have with the left, is that lots of people in this country are like this. Like he's saying, some of you may go on to lead successful careers, but a lot of you are excited about this other way that everybody used to be. And now can't that just be a choice too? And I feel like they feel very put upon, like there's only one way to be a good person, and that's to get an advanced degree from one of those asshole factories like Harvard. I find it very ironic that he's saying, you know what, in my world, we like the women to stay at home and just have babies. And the college kids and the young people find this absolutely abhorrent. But they're demonstrating for Hamas,
Right.
who make that a law. It's not just an opinion in Hamas that you stay home and have the babies. We will enforce you for doing that. Okay, I just wanted to make that point.
Nellie is queers for Palestine, right?
Yes,
Queers
I
for
am.
Palestine.
We both are. We wanted to come and do an intervention.
So Trump,
I love it. Yeah. Whatever happened to like different strokes for different folks, right? It's okay to have a family and be excited about that. In fact, that would be quite a good thing since we have declining birth rates and not enough workers to replace the old people in America. I think, as Elon Musk has rightly pointed out, I think we need a lot more baby making in this country. So I think Harrison made a good point, and good for Bill Maher, even though he's not into that. He's not into the traditional family life. He's saying different strokes for different folks. That's pretty much the way we should be, I think, in this country, is allowing people to disagree peacefully, happily, with a smile on your face. Why is that so hard?
Yeah, I think that clip is fascinating too, because it speaks to the insularity of the Democratic Party as we see it today. The Democratic Party used to be the party of the working man. It used to be the party of everyday families who were struggling to make ends meet. Now it's the party of, to use his words, a-hole factories, right? It's the party of a very entrenched elite who, when opinions like that are shared, like Harrison Butker expressed, they come out and they attack it. And I mean, that's, whether you agree with it or not, that's about 50% of America, potentially more, who feels that way. And to come out and attack it, I think they're just
more.
Yeah,
Honestly.
I think probably
I think it's a lot
70%
more. Yeah.
at least. Yeah, and so the fact that they are espousing what some might call luxury beliefs, this belief that, oh, women should only do this, this, and that, and family making isn't part of the plan, that is what we could consider a luxury belief. And they're virtue signaling by looking down and turning their noses at such opinions. And I think it's really only isolating themselves electorally. And I think we'll see the consequences of that this November. It'll be really interesting to see how it all plays out.
Yeah, for sure. Well, let's go to item number 1 on the weird things that caught my attention this week, which is the Savannah Bananas baseball team, which is like a novelty baseball team. They have dancing between pitches. The umpire dances. They do all kinds of crazy stunts at their games. They sell out their games all the time because it seems like just a crazy party. And they had a new offering in their, I guess, between innings entertainment portfolio. This week, it was baby racing. So, Dylan, why don't we show the video of this? I want to learn how to bet on this. This is the first time I've ever seen baby racing.
Was it actual babies?
Yes.
I got my money on the outside right there.
Gotta be a dark horse.
Yeah.
This is so much better than the subway races at Shea Stadium or Citi Field.
Oh, yeah,
Yankee Stadium.
The
This is at
President
Nationals
races.
Park.
That's why I go to that stadium.
Baby racing is way more. Just screaming at their infants. Get over here!
And then they're frozen at the finish line.
We have a winner.
Look at this kid.
They don't know what to do.
Coming in. Let it come
From the outside. We got a winner. Give that kid a scholarship. Oh my gosh. Baby racing is expected to be on DraftKings or a betting site near you one day very soon. And I'm sure somebody will figure out how to rig the game soon, sooner rather than later. Just don't let the babies bet on baby racing, because then they'll be banned from the Hall of Fame like Pete Rose. That was one of my favorite things that I saw this weekend. So we covered a lot of ground, but don't forget to like and subscribe. Follow us on Twitter at MorganSternNJ, at Sam Lyman 33. It's a fast-moving industry. We got a lot to talk about, but I think we covered a lot this week.
Yeah, I think that's about all I can think of this week. Tune in for potentially more baby racing next week. I think that should be its own sport. I hope ESPN signs a contract with the Professional Baby Racing League. And yeah, we're watching baby races, political races, races between crypto protocols. So be sure to tune in next week as well.
Thanks a lot, everybody.